Welcome all to the PFN Dallas Cowboys Podcast. I'm Jess, Nevarez, joined alongside
Dalton Miller.
Hello, Dalton. This is our first podcast together. I'm so excited.
I am too. And first of all, I need to get this out of the way because it's obvious that I don't have a bunch of Cowboys stuff behind me. I'm sorry, everyone, for pulling a Marcus Mosher here. Mosher always has the jerseys and the Pittsburgh Steelers fandom. I am behind enemy lines. I am at my sister-in-law's house, and her husband, Austin, is a big Pittsburgh sports fan. So that's it. I'm not a Pittsburgh sports fan. He is. And I apologize for what you guys have to look at during this first episode.
I'm so glad you clarified that because we were a little worried. I'm not going to lie. I was looking at it. I was like, I don't know. It's not a Dallas Stars jersey. Should I be concerned?
I need to get me some Stars stuff. I love the way that would look on my wall. I'm going to have to figure that out.
Say less. I got you covered. But let's go ahead and give people a rundown. If they haven't heard about us, first of all, where have you been? And second of all, let's give them a little lowdown because we're going to be doing this podcast together throughout the season. And I just think it's appropriate, not to just throw all this information at them, being like, hey, here's our Cowboys knowledge without giving them a little background about us. So Dalton, go ahead and go first. Give us your elevator pitch about you.
Yeah, so grew up a Cowboys fan in Southern Pennsylvania. Don't ask me how it happened, but that's just kind of the way that things went. Grew up rooting for the Dallas Cowboys. And when you get into NFL media like this, if you're not covering one team, I cover the entire NFL for PFN, your fandom kind of goes away a little bit because it has to. You have to try to be as objective as possible. When Sunday rolls around, if the Dallas Cowboys are playing Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football and they're a primetime team, being America's team, that is the one time where I do get to sit down and root for my team that I rooted for growing up. I started out in this venture in 2017 when I first started going to school after getting out of the Army. I started up my own website, bluechipscouting.com, which is still up and running today. I no longer am associated with it, but if you guys want NFL draft content that isn't from PFN, you guys could go over there and look at that as well. But I started that. I was listening to Dane Brugler, Brian Broaddus, Jeff Kavanaugh, and KT, Kevin Turner talk about the NFL draft. Fell in love with it. Started my own website. Ended up getting a job at the Fan in Dallas, doing some stuff behind the board. Got to get on there and talk a little bit right before I sold my house in Texas and moved. I got on air on the weekends, and then life changed a little bit. I got my full-time job here at PFN, and the rest is history.
Wow, what a great story. And you know what? It's so weird now, to do this podcast with you because I remember listening to you. So it's one of those things that very full circle for me as well. And then all those guys you mentioned, good guys there at the Fan. But yeah, that's awesome. And so in terms of the podcast, we're going to be meshing together a very awesome kind of thing because Dalton's more like analytics, X's and O's, going to give you that side of things. And I'm very reporter-esque, going to give you, the little inside scoop on what I can with having boots on the ground at the Star. So for me, my career has not been all sports. And so it's been the scenic route, as I like to call it. I started doing morning weather in El Paso. That was straight out of college. I was doing morning weather. And let me just say, a 3:30 a.m. call time is not the move. If you ever have done an overnight shift,
I did mornings at the Fan. I know. Yeah. I was in there for.
It's a different kind of tired. And it's like your entire life revolves around what time you go to sleep. And it's just it's such a weird out of body kind of tired that throughout those 3 years, I couldn't tell you what happened. I don't remember a thing. It is insane. But I started doing that. And then when COVID came, I had always wanted to jump into sports media. And I decided what better time. And so I started my own podcast called The Rowdy Roundup. I did that with Joe Hastings. We did that for a couple of years. And that was just a passion project because at that point I was working at a nonprofit that helped really build awareness around mental health in the El Paso community. So I was doing that. And then after that, this job in Dallas opened up as far as working in sports media. And it was the job that I was like, that's the one. I need to move to Dallas. This is the job. So I took it, moved to Dallas. And then about a month, 2 months later, or actually it was about 6 months in, I had this little bird chirping in my ear of, reach out to RJ Ochoa with Blogging the Boys and see what he has for you. And so I did. RJ ended up offering me a position that same day that we met up via Zoom to talk about potential jobs. And I did the Dallas Cowboys Daily podcast with them, as well as the Writer's Block with Brandon Laurie. And it was such a fun year doing all of that with them. But then a month into Blogging the Boys, RJ sends me a message saying, hey, Jane Slater's looking for a girl that can talk Cowboys football. I hope you don't mind I sent her your information. RJ, why would I mind that? Come on.
Right.
So I got in contact with Jane, and then we built the beautiful, beautiful Girls Talk Boys Talk on DallasCowboys.com. We've been doing that since last year, going on a year now. So very, very insane process. Now I'm here with PFN as your Dallas Cowboys beat reporter. And I'm excited giving y'all all the boots on ground coveragers. I like to say sparkly shoes because I don't really wear boots. It's more like sparkly shoes. I like to have fun with my shoe game over here in Frisco. But all right, that's a little bit about us. So if you want to just skip through all of that because we bored you to death, I'm so sorry.
We'll give you the timestamp so you guys can skip it. But I do want to say I'm very excited about this because I went to school for journalism. And although I write for a living, I don't really do journalism. I didn't really go to school to do journalism, but I really do truly respect the people that do it because it takes a mentality that I don't really have and that I find so fascinating in people. And so like, not worrying about like being a pest to people because you have to get that information and having that ability to kind of block that out and just go and do what you have to do. For me, I've always really respected people that are able to do that. So I'm excited for this because I get to be inside the locker room without having to go in there myself.
Yeah, I know. And you know what's funny is when I was first in El Paso, when I was doing some MMJing, so I was a multimedia journalist. That means you write, shoot, edit everything by yourself. I had that anxiety, right? Of, am I being too much? Am I bothering people? And then eventually you just become a little bit numb to it, a little bit callous. But I won't lie, sometimes I do feel like that still. And I have to force myself to get out of that. So yeah, it's been fun. I'm excited to give you all that insight. And I'm excited about this podcast because we are going to start something really great here. And we hope to be a good source of information for you guys that isn't biased. And especially in the world of social media, you have to know who to follow and you have to know where you're getting good information from. So I hope you guys can count on this podcast as such to give you really good, solid, unbiased information. So with that, we are in training camp season and it's almost over, which is insane to even think. We have the Cowboys and Jaguars this Saturday for their first preseason game, which how is it already preseason? I don't know, but I'm not complaining about it either. It sounds glorious to have football back on my TV every weekend. But let's get into some of the hot topics and news for the week because you know, if we sat there and gave you the recap on the last 2.5 weeks, we would be here for like 4 hours. So for time's sake, we're just going to go over the news that we really wanted to talk about for the week. Dalton, I noticed in our little rundown, this one is in all caps for you. So I feel like it's only appropriate to let you introduce the first topic.
Yes. So I will be writing about hot takes throughout the entire NFL, not just for the Dallas Cowboys, but it all stemmed from a question that I got while playing golf with some of the others from PFN up in Connecticut. They asked me for a hot take for the NFL season. That's just not really me. I don't really like do the hot takes thing. Again, like going out of my comfort zone and writing this piece. But the first thing that came to my mind was Micah Parsons is going to break the NFL sack record this year. And now I maybe don't necessarily believe that he'll break the record. I do think that he has a very, very good chance of putting those 20 plus sacks on the box score by the end of the year. I think that the little bit of weight that he has gained has been fantastic to see. I think that it'll help him hold up a little bit as the season progresses. We've seen him come out like crazy the past couple of seasons in his rookie year and in his second year, but injuries, little knickknacks here have kind of slowed him down as season has progressed. And I think that he's going to do a better job remaining healthier by the end of the year, because all these guys are banged up by the time week 16, 17, and 18 roll around. But I think the more stamina he's able to build with a little bit more of that NFL body, that you got to remember, he's still only 23, 24 years old. He's still building into his man frame. I mean, it takes a while. So I think that he is somebody who is going to, already one of the best players in the NFL, is going to absolutely explode this year.
Oh, yeah, and what I really liked about him when he was talking about his off-season training, he talked about focusing on his weaknesses, not necessarily, upping the game that he already knows that he's good at and that he can play well, but focusing on the weaknesses and picking the brains of other people that can help him do that, like offensive linemen, like Andrew Whitworth. I mean, he's just getting smarter with his game, and so far in practice, what we've seen he looks like a December form Micah Parsons already in training camp, which is absolutely insane to think where he will be come December when he's in that full form and really in the mix with being in the season. So I agree. I think it is a hot take, but it's a smart hot take, right? And I think you can have a hot take that's like, you're just saying that. But this is a smart, well thought out hot take because, again, Micah Parsons being on that edge position is only going to help him more, and really transforming to focus on that edge more than anything else is really going to solidify that you don't want to be an opposing quarterback that has to go against Micah Parsons. I mean, I'm good. I'm so glad that's not me. I'm glad I could just sit here on this mic and talk about it, and that we don't have to be the guys that deal with that. So great one. I like that. I think every week we should start with a little bit of Dalton's hot take and see if it's really hot or not. Yeah. And we'll say hot or not. And I'm going this week. It's hot. It's hot. Look, and anything Micah Parsons, it's really hard to disagree with when you're talking about Micah Parsons being great. So you made my job easy this week. Thank you. Somebody else that I think will be very impactful when it comes to the defense and the D-line specifically, the whole reason why he was drafted. We're talking Mazi Smith. And so yesterday, we're recording this on Wednesday. On Tuesday, it came out that he was not at practice because he was getting a precautionary MRI, according to NFL Network. And so what I wanted to really know is, it said that the reason was he was dealing with some tendonitis during camp, and it was interesting because the day before that, Jerry Jones was talking about how excited he was to see Mazi and another handful of guys play during Saturday's game. So to me, it was a little bit surprising because, one, it didn't look like Mazi was hurting in any way, shape, or form during camp. I mean, he's just plowing through people like it's easy, and he's plowing through big guys. And so for me, if, I guess it just, September 10th is so far away that it's kind of hard to say, well, is he really going to start that game or not? My concern is, does he need the preseason play time ahead of that? Or do you think he's somebody that really can sit out if he has to and then play come September or maybe even the last preseason game?
Yeah, so I'm actually okay with kind of whatever happens with Mazi, mostly because I have a lot of faith in Jonathan Hankins. And if need be, I think Quinton Bohanna, as long as he makes the team, I think that they can provide the snaps, even if Mazi wouldn't be able to play. I think what we saw from Hankins when he came over from Las Vegas last year was fantastic. It helped out the run defense incredibly well. So I think that no matter what happens, I'm not too worried about it this year. I think and I've said this from the time that he was drafted, it might take him some time. First of all, I don't think that people really understand how difficult of a transition playing the nose tackle is from the college level to the NFL level. A lot of the times it is two very different positions, especially because at the college level, you're seeing a lot of 3-man type fronts. So you're seeing like 3-3-6 or 3-3-5 defenses. And a guy that is playing as a true nose, he's just taking up the the two A gaps, and that's about it. Things will be a little bit different here. It might take him a little bit of time to progress at the NFL level in Dan Quinn's defense, but you have somebody like Hankins to really step up to make it so it's not necessary in year one. And I know a lot of people were upset. They saw the jersey, they saw that he's an upside guy and thought, back to Taco Charlton, but it's completely different. First of all, because of the position that he plays being different, but because he is one of the most ridiculous athletes that I've ever scouted. It is one of the reasons why I fell in love with him as a prospect, even before he was a Dallas Cowboy, and why I think that he could truly be one of the more special defensive tackles in the entire NFL. For me, he reminded me of a little bit bigger version of somebody like Jeffrey Simmons, who is just more physically dominant than you are on the offensive line. And if he can get the technical aspect of things down, if he can fix his lackluster starts off of the snap, he is going to be one of the more dangerous defensive tackles in the NFL.
And the thing about Mozzie is that he was drafted to shore up that run defense that was the Cowboys' defense's kryptonite last season, whether it be the run game and RPO, really anything of that matter. And so with Mozzie coming in, of course, it showed how serious the Cowboys were fixing their downfalls that really cost them the season last year. But his work will come in the pass rush, not so much the run defense. He's there to patch up the run D with Jonathan Hankins, who, by the way, when he was injured and LVE was out at the same time, that showed you how much those two guys were doing for the run defense and kind of carrying the weight on their shoulders. So it'll be interesting now to see how much of that is kind of rationed to Mozzie, if you will, and then what Leighton is able to do, outside of having to fill that spot. So going to be an interesting thing to watch for, I think. But as far as Mozzie, I think he's the kind of guy that even if this wasn't an issue, he wouldn't get full reps come preseason because they know how much he's going to be utilized during the season. So I think it's not the end of the world if he doesn't play Saturday. I don't think it's the end of the world if he doesn't play next Saturday. And to be quite frank, he might not even have to play during the preseason. I would like it. It would make me feel a little bit better to give him some actual game time scenario type situations. But at the end of the day, I trust Dan Quinn so much that I think Mozzie will be fine regardless of what happens. It is something worrisome, though, that if that MRI comes back with something that's going to be a little bit nagging for his knee throughout the season, that's where I worry. But at this time, we don't really know what it is. It just looks like it's some tendonitis and it was precautionary. So no need for the sky to be falling with that as well. And something else that the sky doesn't need to be falling for yet. And I say yet because it could eventually, but Zack Martin has still yet to report to Dallas Cowboys camp. And it looks like at this point, he has about $600,000 worth of fines that they really can't excuse at this point. He has to pay those no matter what. And I pulled up this article of, something Jerry Jones had said about it when he was asked if he was surprised. He said, quote, not really. Surprise really is not the word here. It's very costly. And so that's where we are. Huge, significant ramifications by anybody's math. And end quote there. So, Dalton, my question is, I said the sky's not falling yet. When does the sky start falling if Zack Martin does not report? At what point do we start to get worried?
September 10th. Until September 10th, I'm not worried. Zack Martin doesn't need to practice. Zack Martin doesn't need to play a single snap in the preseason. I don't care if he practices the week leading up to week one. I don't care. As long as he is in uniform at right guard on September 10th, I'm happy. He is one of the top 20 players in the NFL. He is the best guard of this generation. He might be the best interior lineman that we have ever seen. I'm not worried about him. He didn't have maybe the super high-end all-pro year that he had last year, but he was still an all-pro. He was still better than anybody else at his position. So I'm not worried about him not coming to training camp at all. As long as he's there week 10, I'm happy.
Are you
week 1?
Oh, I was going to say week 10.
Yeah, not week 10. I meant September 10th.
The sky would be completely gone at that point if he waited until week 10.
Yeah.
But my question to you is, are you surprised that he's held out this long? And are you surprised that there hasn't been really a deal or from what it sounds like a discussion even had about getting him a deal at this point? We've seen Trayvon Diggs get his deal. We saw Malik Hooker get his deal. So are you shocked that these are the kind of deals that are coming first? Where's your mindset with all of that in terms of the money and that situation with the cap space?
So I'm not shocked. Dallas Cowboys offensive linemen have always given Jerry Jones very, very team-friendly deals for forever. And he was one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid guard in the NFL when they made him that. But the market has changed quite a bit, and he's still the best guard in the NFL, and he should be paid proportionate to how good he is as a football player still. And you pay for now and for the future and not what you have gotten in the past, but he's still playing at an incredibly high level and he deserves to be compensated as such. It's not surprising to see guys like Trayvon Diggs and Hooker get their deals done first. I think that you do whatever you have to do to keep Dan Quinn happy and keep Dan Quinn on your staff, because I think he's really what drives the success of that defense. Even though it is incredibly talented, you need to have. It sounds degrading to call him the puppet master, but he's the guy who is the architect of that defense. He's the guy that makes it run the way that it does. He's the guy who calls the correct plays when it matters, especially his pass rush packages on third down. So I think when I look at it, I'm not surprised that this is happening. I am surprised at how far away it seems to be between the two sides, and that there has just been almost no give either way. And that is a little bit concerning. But I think at the end of the day, Zack Martin's going to come back and play in week 1, no matter what.
Yeah, and I think that was Jerry's argument was when we made this deal, it was the top deal, and Jerry went on to say that if we did this for every player whose market was changing, we would constantly be changing contracts. And so it's so hard to argue against Zack Martin because it's not like you're talking about just anybody, right? And a conversation that I saw brought up was how do you feel if you're other guys that need their deal, like Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons, Tyler Biotish, Terrence Steele, those kind of guys that are on contract years. How do you feel if Zack Martin's cutting you in line? Zack Martin can cut you in line all he wants. He's Zack Martin, right? And
that's what Brandon Thorne, somebody who studies offensive and defensive linemen for a living, he tweeted this the other day or something along these lines. It was you make exceptions for exceptional players, and Zack Martin is an exception.
Yeah.
You pay him no matter what. Whatever he is asking, he has earned that money.
And I think the thing about this Cowboys team is they know that and they understand that. You don't have a guy on this team that I can even think of that would argue it and would say, no, give me my money first. Because I think at the end of the day, even Micah Parsons would sit there and be like, it's Zack Martin, man. Like, do what you got to do, Dak Prescott definitely is the kind of guy that would say, hey, it's Zack. I need Zack. For me to be successful, I even need Zack. And so I don't think there's necessarily such thing as cutting the lunch line as far as Zack Martin goes, because you just say yep, go ahead, all yours. But it'll be interesting to see how long this takes and how it shakes out as these next couple of weeks really continue on. Because again, the sky's not falling yet, so we don't have to panic just yet. But let's get into the offensive line real quick, because training camp, full swing. We've seen a lot of rotation within that O-line, even before training camp. This is something that we saw last season, the versatility, the Jason Peters effect, if you will, with Jason Peters coming in to kind of be that swing guy and just on the fly saying, hey, I'm going to move sides of the line and I'm going to make it look like it's not hard to do when it's something that's extremely difficult. So what's your take on the O-line where it is right now, even without Zack Martin? Going into the preseason, who are you really going to look at as far as where they are and how they've stepped up throughout camp?
Yeah, for me, the guys that I'm looking at are Matt Waletzko, Chuma Edoga, and for me, Matt Farniok. Those are the three guys that I really want to see the preseason have good days. I obviously am not at camp, so I can't see, them going through drills, one-on-ones, team periods and such like that. But when we get into the competitive side of things, when we get into these preseason games, joint practices, if they're being televised, I want to see those guys really stepping up and see, who is going to end up being that swing tackle, who is going to be the guy who is going to step in at left guard. And I think that this is where, my biggest issue is with the Zack Martin stuff is that you're probably, if he were to hold out, you're going to be down 2 guards at some point, because your left guard right now, Tyler Smith, is going to end up being the left tackle at some point. I love Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith is a fantastic left tackle. He's one of the best of this generation, but he has not been healthy, and he's not healthy, and he hasn't been healthy for 6 years now. I believe over the last 2 years, he's played like 11 football games. So I just think that it's something we thought they were going to address in the NFL draft. They ended up not really doing so until round 5. And I can't imagine Asim Richards is going to be ready as a rookie. So I'm really looking at Farniok as being that interior guy to step up eventually, even though they said he was going to start getting more snaps at center, in camp and in the preseason. I think that he's the guy I'm really looking at guard.
And I want to say it's been almost 10 years now since Tyron has played a full season for the Cowboys. I want to say it's been that long, because
I think his last full season was like 2015 or 2016.
Yeah, it's going on almost 10 years at this point. So I remember when I was writing, an article going into camp, I said it was Tyron Smith against Father Time, because at this point, that's what it feels like. It's something that when he's great, but can he stay healthy? And that's always the biggest question. So yeah, Tyler Smith there's so many Smiths on that line.
Well, writing about the Cowboys offensive line is so hard, because you have on the left side, you have Tyron Smith and Tyler Smith, and then you have Tyler Biotish. So when you're
on the D line,
in journalism, you do first name, last name on the first mention of them, and then you do the last name, but you can't do the last name.
Yep.
And you can't do first initial last name.
Yep.
You can't do second either.
I get it.
It's
a lot. Pain. And so you just have to end up writing their full name every single time you do it, because people are like, wait, which Smith on which side of the ball? Because you even have Mozzie Smith on the opposite side, and they're like, wait, why is he talking about Mozzie? Like,
if it were up to me, I would just put their numbers on there. That's so much easier for me anyways than to remember names. Just remember numbers.
So you're telling me if you ever get a time machine, you're going to go back and be like, hey, whoever made up this rule when it comes to AP style writing, we're using numbers, not names. That's what I'm 100%. Hearing. Yeah. I love that. I love that for you. Let's get you a DeLorean from Back to the Future. Let's make it happen. But, the thing about the O-line is it's been so interesting to me to see it evolve to be what it is now, especially over the last few years, right? Because I really grew up watching the Tony Romo O-line that was like a wall. It's not going anywhere. It's just there, and you don't even really have to worry about it. And so for me, their emphasis going into this camp was to really focus on how quickly Dak Prescott can get that ball out and the pass pro, because at the end of the day, that was not great last year. And so I really hope that whoever is wherever in that line, that Dak Prescott is protected, because a lot of that stress and miscommunication that we saw within the offensive line, it goes into scheme, it goes into play calling, it goes into miscommunications. We know all that. But I also think when it comes to the ripple effect of this having, it's really frustrating that the Dak Prescott interception conversation is one that's still being had and not being looked at as a whole, because it's not just Dak, right? And his receivers have admitted that. The O-line has admitted that. And so anything to get the Dak Prescott interception thing out of the media headlines would just be fantastic for me. And if that means shoring up the O-line, please just do it. Because again, the interceptions last year were not just a product of Dak Prescott. It was a product of the entire offensive coordination and scheme and playbook and just everything in between. So for me, Josh Ball, this is your make or break year, my guy. He's been playing a lot of right guard during camp, and it hasn't been, what's the way I can say this? It hasn't been obviously Zack Martin level, and it's not going to be, but it hasn't been a drop off necessarily every single play as you would expect from Josh Ball. So for me, prove it. This is your prove it time. This preseason is going to be your prove it time. Prove to me that you deserve to be where you are within that line, whether you're a swing or not. So Josh Ball, all eyes on you, because this is your time to shine, and you're going to make it or you're going to break it. So Josh Ball is somebody that I'm focusing in on a lot. However, let's go back to the wide receiver core, because that wide receiver 4 competition was something that was already a really good battle going into camp. But as we've seen throughout these last couple of weeks, there's some of these younger guys and these undrafted guys that are coming in and making a name for themselves. So really, when you're looking at that wide receiver 4 spot, when we went into camp, it was Jalen Tolbert, Semi Fihoko, Kavonte Turpin. Those were the 3 guys that you were really looking at and saying, okay, these are obvious guys that could vie for the spot. But then Jalen Brooks enters the chat. John Stevens Jr. enters the chat. And it kind of just makes things a little more competitive than it already was going into this preseason. So far, obviously, I think Kavonte Turpin and Jalen Tolbert they're there. And Jalen Tolbert, I'm so proud of him. Let me just say, let me get on my soapbox. I talked to him in the locker room last year, and I talked to him as, the guy that was clearly frustrated with himself and down, and just frustrated that he wasn't the guy that was getting the praise because he wanted it. He wanted that spot so bad that you could just tell he was upset. And so to see all the work he did over the offseason, I knew something was coming. I was like, there's no way he doesn't go into the first day of camp just killing it. And to see what he's been able to do in camp, he looks like a starting wide receiver, period. Not even wide receiver 4. He looks like a starting wide receiver. And it's phenomenal to see. So when I saw him, I was like, I'm so proud of you. This is so cool to watch, because Jalen and I we went through our rookie seasons together, right? So that was the first season of Girls Talk, Boys Talk. So I would talk to him a lot about, this is new for me too. And it's not even the same amount of pressure that you feel. So I can't even imagine how you feel. But we're both going to be okay. We're both going to be great, and it's okay, And so to see him where he is now, I'm so proud of him. Oh my goodness. He's put in so much work. He looks phenomenal, and Dak Prescott is so high on him for obvious reasons. So I think Jalen and Kavonte are 2 solids at that point. But other than those 2, who has overwhelmed you and who has maybe underwhelmed you a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, just to get the elephant of the room out of the way, Simi it's just not come together for him. Obviously, when they took a chance on him from Stanford, big wide receiver with great straight line speed, and you thought, maybe he'd be able to develop into somebody who could kind of take the top off for the defense, play along the sideline, kind of in a role that Michael Gallup plays right now, as that number 3 type of wide receiver who can make big plays and show great body control, but it just hasn't really worked out for him. Ball tracking downfield hasn't been fantastic. And so it's been disappointing to see how that's gone. And it's always tough, especially for us, like people who I guess get to know, some of these guys a little bit to see their dreams go away. And hopefully he's able to, if he doesn't make the team and it doesn't really look like it's going very well right now, to get another shot somewhere. It just never really worked out here. And so I think that's the negative, but the positive of this is that Jalen Brooks looks like a fantastic rookie right now, really showing out in camp. And then not just him, but John Stevens Jr. as well. So I think for that last spot, it's really going to come down to which guy is going to be able to bring you more on special teams. And it seems like Jalen Brooks is kind of showing out in that regard so far.
Special teams. I'm so glad you brought it up. It's so important, and we love special teams over here because it's just such an underrated part of the game. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
I don't like special teams.
Oh,
I don't like it.
So good.
I don't like it. It's.
Oh man.
Okay, so this is like crusty athlete talking here.
Oh no.
But like
that
kickers,
horrible.
Kickers just like I watch college football is what ruined kicking for me. Because you see these guys giving it their all for like a 4-hour game because college games are so long. And you have a kicker who is going to be asked to make a 37-yard field goal as time expires. And there's like a 50-50 chance he's going to make this 37-yard field goal. And like, I feel bad for these guys because there is we cannot imagine the type of pressure that like a kicker in Death Valley in that situation is going through. But like you're kicking a football. Like it just, for me, it's upsetting when a team loses because of a kicker. And it really goes to show, like, you really cannot take for granted your Dan Baileys of the world. You can't take for granted your Justin Tuckers of the world, because once it falls off for a kicker, and we saw this last year at the end of the season, when it's over, it's over. And, you know, maybe they eventually get it back, but when it's gone, and you are SOL. And so it's always tough to see a bad kicking game. The only hope is that this makes the Cowboys more aggressive on fourth downs and they just go for it a little bit more often.
See, and I am such a kicking fanatic here. You have to remember, I grew up in the Dan Bailey era. So for me, kickers are like there, and they're there for a reason. They're there to play for a purpose. Personally, and maybe this is a hot take for me, I would have kept Brett Maher even after last year. I would have kept him on the roster because he was your highest scorer, and he was the highest scorer in the NFL for a hot minute there. He was consistent, and during the Cooper Rush time when Dak Prescott was out with that thumb injury, he kept you in the games, right? So he had a phenomenal season. It's just really unfortunate that his yips came at the wrong time, and that just downplays it. The wrong time.
And we've seen this with Cowboys kickers who have gone to move on to other spots in recent time. He'll probably end up playing pretty well again. He'll probably end up figuring it out again. It just, yeah, you're right. The timing of it was awful for the Cowboys.
It was horrible. No, and I really wanted him to work out because I didn't want to see the kicking competition again this year. And I didn't want to worry about it because it's been a deja vu since 2022 of this kicking competition that you see younger kickers come in and you're like, okay, let's see what you got. And then 2 weeks in, you're like, okay, I've seen what I need to see, right? So we've seen a very similar situation leading up to when they did sign Maher last year. In fact, let's see, August 9th, a year ago today, they signed Brett Maher for that veteran kicker position. And so for me, it's Jerry Jones has said over and over, you know, Brandon Aubrey's our guy. We wanted to give him more reps. And that's great, but I want to see him in the preseason game on Saturday. Show me what you got. And it's interesting because he was not doing great in camp these last couple of weeks. As soon as Tristan Vizcaino was out of the picture, he had a perfect day at camp. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Does that tell me he can handle the pressure of a little competition? Does that tell me he can't? I don't know. I guess one perfect day of practice doesn't eliminate the last couple of weeks for me either. So kicking competition for me is still very worrisome. And I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of preseason, you know, kind of right before that last game, if he's not on the most perfect streak of his life, we do see a veteran kicker coming in. And there are some still available. So very interesting situation and deja vu-esque situation at that to be in. But as far as the returner, since we're talking about special teams who you just are not a fan of, I love me some special teams. I think it's
okay. So it's not special
phenomenal.
Teams, it's more the kicking. It's more just the kicking side of things.
Okay.
Like, punters, I love punters. It's more just kickers. But
okay, kickers.
Just real quick, I'm kind of circling the Los Angeles Chargers. Whoever loses the Cameron Dicker and Dustin Hopkins competition, that's kind of where I've been looking at for our potential kicker this year.
Interesting. Okay, there we go. Okay, perfect. You heard it here first. If it happens, it's like Dalton had a little crystal ball and was just manifesting that for the Cowboys. So we love that. But okay, so let's go to the returner kind of competition. And I say competition lightly because to me, it's a backup returner. I think Kevontae Turpin absolutely fortified his spot well before this was even a question about Deuce Vaughn being drafted. I think it was never a question in anybody's mind if he was going to keep that spot or not. What's interesting to me is when you lose Noah Brown in the offseason, who was kind of that backup guy for Kevontae, who takes that spot? And so for me, when I say competition, it's really a backup spot to Kevontae Turpin, who's going to get all of the returns, I believe, this season. So without that, who takes it? You have Deuce Vaughn, who is Deuce Vaughn. We'll get into that. We have Rico Dowdle and then Malik Davis, who were all three getting reps during OTAs and minicamp. However, during training camp, what I've seen so far is it's more Malik Davis and Deuce Vaughn. It looks like Rico has been kind of taken out of that, but that's just what I've seen. I haven't been there, this week to see it. But who do you think gets that kind of backup to Kevontae Turpin role?
Yeah, I would kind of personally, I would love to see Kevontae continue to take kick returns and maybe see him and Deuce go in and out of the punt return role. I think Turpin's speed and agility is just so perfect for more of the old school kickoff rules that no longer exist because it was just very dangerous. But I think when you look at punt returns, Deuce is just so difficult to square up on because he is so small. And I think when you look at him, you look at a guy who is, 5'5", 5'6", 175 pounds, and 175 pounds seems really, really small. But when you ever look at a 5'5" or a 5'6" guy that's 175 pounds the way that he is, with the amount of muscle that he is not a small human being. He has good muscle mass. He has the ability to, when guys don't square him up, to bounce off of tackles. And now he's not going to be prime Ezekiel Elliott bouncing off of guys, but his creativity, his vision, I think would be really good in that punt return role. He might not get the starting job, but I think that he has enough juice, as long as he's comfortable fielding the punts consistently, that he should end up with that role.
Yeah, and I think Malik Davis was also a really good vie for that role because of his speed. But when you look at Deuce, and it always just drives me crazy when people try to downplay his talent because of his size, because he is a very talented player. And people can't see him. You seem to forget that these guys that are towering over you, you're not in their sight of vision that they're used to looking at when they see a bigger punt returner or even just a bigger guy coming at them, right? So for me, Deuce has learned how to maneuver through his size and play it up to his advantage. And he's said that before, but when you watch him play, you can really see how, because he's out of that sight, that vision of line that people are used to playing at. They have to purposely look for Deuce if he's in. And he's just so shifty. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The amount of times I've seen Deuce shift his weight within a matter of a second, less than that, it's been incredible to watch. And so obviously Deuce is the media darling out of the draft for the reason with his dad. But I think when you talk to him as well, you just understand that Deuce is your full package of a player. He's very well-spoken, very respectful, very yes ma'am, no ma'am. He called me ma'am when I was talking to him. I was like, Deuce, please. I'm not 30 yet. Like, don't call me ma'am. But he's such a nice guy off the field, and he really has mocked his game off of Darren Sproles because they're the same height and all of that. And when he's picking off of Darren Sproles' mind, look, give me all of that. If you're going to give me like a new version of Darren Sproles, why would you not want that on your roster? And I think
much
for me
better
too,
to have it on your side than on your rival side.
Yeah, I would rather have it that way. But I also think for somebody like Deuce to kind of help alleviate the amount of, I guess, beating put on Kevontae Turpin, that also helps because you see that interchangeably with the running back position. So why not do it with that punt returner position as well? I think that could be something that elongates people's, season and not have them feeling so beat up by the end of it. But
especially if Turpin's going to play a more significant role in offense. Yeah.
And I think he will. I think at this point it's just a matter of how many I guess plays they want to put him in and where exactly on the field, because I don't know if he's exactly your red zone guy, but I do think he's your short yardage, quick snap, get it out kind of guy, right? And so I think as far as that returner position, Deuce Vaughn is your guy. Let's get back into the running back position because I kind of touched on that a little as well. Another very intriguing position. And, it's one of the most young positions in the room right now that are battling for that spot. Do you feel like any of these guys are actually ready to take that on? We have Deuce Vaughn, Rico Dowdle, and Malik Davis. Do you feel like they're ready, or do you still feel like you need that veteran presence in that room other than Tony Pollard?
No, I don't think you need a veteran presence. I think Pollard is going to get obviously the majority of the snaps and touches on offense at the running back position, but more than enough from Rico Dowdle and Malik Davis both at the running back position that I'd be comfortable even if Tony Pollard had to miss a little bit of time with those two rotating in and out. As long as the offensive line is able to block, be assignment sound and get a push on that offensive line, I think either of those guys would be good enough. They both have multiple years in the NFL at this point, and although they've been, more practice squad guys than actually getting on the field on Sundays, I think that they have more than enough experience, and they still have a lot of their longevity because they haven't been taking those hits week in and week out.
So if you had to pick one guy that's going to back up Tony Pollard and be he can be the lightning and TP can be the thunder, or he can be the 2 and the 1 punch, who is that guy for you where it stands right now? And this could change next week. I think it changes daily. So just right now, as we're recording this.
I think it's going to end up being Rico Dowdle. I think that the fans, for the most part, Twitter, for the most part, kind of leans towards more or closer towards Malik. But guys who I trust, who evaluate the running back position, seem to favor Rico Dowdle a little bit more than Malik Davis usually. So I'm going to go with kind of the appeal to authority here and say that it's going to end up being Rico, but I don't think that there's really a wrong answer. And I think that any of those guys can take snaps at an NFL quality level.
No, I agree. And I'm glad you said Rico because he's somebody that even before minicamp OTAs, I was gunning for to say, look, I really want this guy to finally have his opportunity. Now that Zeke is out, my mind went to Rico Dowdle to say, like, he's healthy again. Let's see what he can do. And during OTAs and minicamp, blew me away. I was like, is this the same Rico Dowdle? Like, what is going on? Why does he look so great? And it's not a matter of like being shady towards him or anything. It was, I forgot how great a healthy Rico Dowdle can actually look and how fast he can be. So for me, since OTAs and minicamp, I've been leaning towards Rico Dowdle only because, again, when he's healthy, he's healthy. The only thing that worries me about him is, can he stay healthy? And I think when you have that 1-2 punch that he's not taking everything and neither is Tony Pollard, you have a really good mix there. And really, really, you shouldn't. I get the West Coast offense. You want to rely a little bit more on that run game, and that's their identity that they want to keep. But now, if you have the pass pro that you needed, Dak Prescott can not only just rely on the run game 24/7. I mean, you're not talking about running the ball on 3rd and 10 every single time anymore, which is going to be nice to see. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Rico Dowdle this week, and that really hasn't changed since OTAs or minicamp. So I was really excited when the unofficial roster came out, and to see him where he was great. And then I think that's, tight end 1. We had one more position group, and then I'm going to ask you who has surprised you the most. So think about that as well. But tight end 1, I don't really think this is a competition. I think it's a matter of how many tight ends the Cowboys will keep on the roster. So where it stands right now, who is making the final roster for you? Is it 3 tight ends or is it 4?
Well, it'd be really interesting to see if they keep 4 tight ends or if they keep 4 running backs. I think that's kind of where I look at it. I tend to lean more towards them keeping 4 running backs because I can't see which one that they would cut at this point. Maybe one of Davis or Dowdle, but at this point, I kind of doubt it. I think that they like both those guys. Most likely, they would still end up, falling in and being able to be re-signed onto the practice squad, but I don't think that they really want to take that chance. I think that they're looking at Ferguson, Hendershot, and Schoen as the 3 guys, and that's nothing against McKeon at all. I think he's been fantastic in the little spurts that we've seen him play. We just haven't really gotten to see enough of it. And the assets that they have spent on those other 3 guys far outweigh his. So he would have to really outplay one of those guys and make it so that they want to keep 4 tight ends or have to keep 4 tight ends over 4 running backs.
What's interesting to me is I was kind of on that same train ahead of training camp of,
I think I know where this is going.
There's 3 guys that are just solidified tight ends for your Dallas Cowboys now. The problem is that when Sean McKeon's having a better training camp than Peyton Hendershot, you have a little bit of an issue. And that, again, it's no shade. It's no shade to any of these guys ever. It's just when the name Sean McKeon is coming up constantly as a constant guy that Dak is throwing the ball to, and Peyton Hendershot isn't, that's worrying me a little bit. And it's not that Peyton looks bad. It has nothing to do with him playing bad. It's just I'm wondering how much more is being given to Sean McKeon because Peyton's just not at that same level right now. And even during OTAs and mini camps, it was kind of like, well, what is going on here? Because Sean even looked good then. So for me, it's, I want Peyton to be a solidified tight end on this roster more than anything. I want to continue to see how he can grow because I think he has a really great skill set of being the faster kind of tight end in the room. I think when you're looking at Jake and you're looking at Luke and then you're even looking at Sean, I think Peyton is the fastest one in that group that you need. You need that speed and you need that running ability. But I haven't seen a lot of him at camp, which if he was having a great camp, you would see a lot of those clips floating around. And we started to see more of him in the red zone, which I think is a really good confidence boost for him. But I'm just wondering why up until this point, it's kind of been radio silent for him. Sean McKeon's had a better camp than him, and that's just what it is. He's had a great camp, period. He's had one of the better camps of any guy on this team. So it's not shading Peyton. And my dog is over here hacking. I don't know if you can hear that. That was horrible.
Nope. Couldn't hear
it. Good. My dog's like, what are you talking about, Mom? This is such a hot take. But again, I wouldn't discount Sean McKeon yet. And Brian Schottenheimer was very quick to give Sean all of the credit that he deserved in his press conference. I'd asked him, what about your tight end room? And he said, a guy that is so underrated and so not talked about enough is Sean McKeon. So again, I wouldn't count him out. To me, I see them keeping 4 tight ends on your roster, only because, with Luke, he hasn't been healthy yet. Really, this week was the first week we've seen him back on the field. And with the kind of injury he has, I looked into this and I talked to a few people about it because I was a little confused to what it was. And it's almost easier if he just completely ripped that part of his foot for it to heal quicker than what he has now. It's going to just continue to nag and nag and nag and nag, which is why they have held him out for so long. So I think now you're at the point where you're starting to see him get a little bit more. But what I didn't like was that over the weekend, Mike McCarthy had mentioned, yeah, he had a little bit of a setback. But then all of a sudden he's back on the field this week. So
were they saying that he had previously had a setback with it and now everything's good? Was there any clarification?
No, not that I got. But what I think it'll just be something to keep an eye on. I don't think you're going to see them pushing him during this preseason time at all. I really appreciate Mike McCarthy's ramp-up approach with these guys that come back from injury. So It does worry me just a little bit that it's this foot injury. You obviously need your foot to be a productive tight end.
Yeah.
It worries me a little bit to where I'm a little hesitant to take Sean McKeon completely out of the equation for those reasons. So I think, again, the wide receiver group being as good as it is makes this a hard conversation. The running back group being as competitive as it is makes it a hard conversation. So the tight end room, also just a really exciting room to be watching for. But
these are good problems to have.
Yeah, I was about to say, we didn't think that this would be an issue, and it's a great issue to have. But who has been your standout guy from camp to end this podcast on high note? Who has been your guy that you're like, whoa?
I think it's got to be DeMarvion Overshown. I think probably a little bit lower on him coming from Texas than a lot of people were. I didn't hate him as a prospect. And I think that I still need to see a lot in these preseason games and in full pads. He was always a guy who was a great athlete, former safety back in the day. I think that if he can bring you some upside in coverage, you're looking at somebody who ends up being what we thought Jabril Cox could be back in the day. And, that just, kind of is what it is. Injuries have kind of, hurt that development a little bit, but Overshown, from everything I've heard, has had a very good camp. And I think that that's a little bit surprising. I kind of expected him to be a guy who would be a special teamer in year one, almost exclusively, and not see the field on defense. But if he can end up being that third linebacker to rotate in, I think that that's a huge win for the Dallas Cowboys in his rookie season.
Oh yeah, Overshown is not overshown. Let me just tell you, he looks fantastic. And look, you're gonna have to get used to these puns. I live for them.
Listen, I'm about to be
them.
a father, so I need to get used to the puns. I need to start bringing my own puns to the game.
You know what? The more puns, the better. Bring all the puns. For me, I'm going Sean McEwen. And you heard all of the reasons why, because he was a guy that had no expectations going into camp, and he has made a name for himself. He's technically the oldest guy in the room, the most veteran player in your room. So he should be having this kind of camp. But for him to come out and do it on a consistent basis, day in and day out for the last 2.5 weeks, has been such a breath of fresh air. And he's making sure his name isn't taken out of that competition. I mean, really, it would have been easy to do, considering there was a second-round draft pick that you had at tight end, and Sean McEwen continues to have a great camp. So I'm excited to see if they put him in during the preseason, which I assume they will, and what he looks like even there with Cooper Rush. So it looks like we're going to have to change that up a little bit week to week as camp season continues on. But thank you guys so much for tuning in with us this week. We are so excited to be doing this podcast, and we hope that you keep following along with us. Dalton, where can the people find you on social media if they want to tweet you about your hot or not take for the week?
At Dalton B. Miller.
Oh, well, I guess it's X. I don't know what the verbiage is to say, like, that you tweet someone. Do you X somebody?
No, you don't. I don't think they're calling it an X, because it's not a re-X. It's a repost. So I think it's just a post.
Oh, well, yeah. Look, for me,
it's the only brand who had brand recognition that literally turned into a verb, and they just took it away.
Yeah, that's true. We'll say tweet for now, because I really don't know the answer to that question. And for me, if the URL still says twitter.com on my computer, that's what it is. So they can find you there. Please go tweet Dalton if his take was a hot or a not for you this week. You can find me at Jess Nevarez _ on Twitter /X, whatever we are calling it these days. And send me all the puns you have for player names, because I'm running out, and that's not good. I need to be on full lockdown before the season even starts. So Dalton, thank you so much for your time this week, my friend. We'll reconvene next week, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about post Jacksonville versus Dallas Cowboys for the first preseason game. We'll talk to you guys next week. Have a great rest of your day and week. Go Cowboys.